Kraft explained why he fired James Franklin. Terry Smith explained the feeling of taking over for James Franklin as Penn State's interim head coach. We talked about the firing of Franklin on Sunday. Now it's Wednesday, and we're going to talk about what's been happening in the days since. Joe Smeltzer, Nittany Sports Now. Kyle Fatman Golik, also Nittany Sports Now. This is Joe and the Fat Man. Kyle, you were there on Zoom. I was there in person for Pat Kraft and Terry Smith's press conference Monday at Beaver Stadium. We'll talk about Pat and Terry, but first, let's get your thoughts on Pat Kraft, what he had to say, why he got rid of James Franklin, made that decision, and what your takeaways were from all of it.
So when we start thinking Pat Kraft here, there's an element that I feel, Joe, that he won the press conference, but there's like a caveat emptor because he had that silver tongue about him, about what the standard is. And in a lot of ways, I wish we would have had the opportunity to press him more on the scales of why did you fire James Franklin? When did this become you want to do this? Was it something personal? Was it, at an 80% plus fail rate in major ranked games, did that really tip the scale? Was this year's heavy investment? Because you have to imagine, people have alluded to that Penn State has one of the higher payrolls in the country. We're not going to go there because it's not publicly known or factual, but there's a pretty good assumption that we know they went $3 million in for Knowles. So was it a combination of things? Was there an ultimatum post UCLA? Because I can tell you this, Joe, you and I have watched Penn State for a long time. I know I have, our viewers have, and whatnot. That wasn't an Andy Kotelnicki offense that we saw on the field against Northwestern. I don't care what James says or anyone. I saw that exact offense when Kirk Shiraka was basically on thin ice. And I saw eerily similar things in 2020 when that stuff was going on.
You mean like a quarterback draw on 3rd and 10, which was called in Saturday's game?
Yeah, and what was that the same quarterback draw that ended Drew Aller's career?
I was thinking of a different play. Drew got hurt, I think, on a shorter yardage situation. I don't know. Yeah, this was just a random play in the first.
We were heading down to the field, if you recall. So that's why I'm kind. But there was something very awry there. Like James was totally different. So what Pat has now done is he's gone big. Now I was talking to one of my Notre Dame writing friends, and his exact message to me was, Pat Kraft presser a little cringe. If I was a coach, is that AD I want to work for?
What presser was he watching? With all due respect, I mean,
I could see his point though, and this is where I'm going to go with it. Sometimes when people talk real big, you can come off a little cringe because there seems to be this, like, think about what James accomplished. As many have indicated, in the last 3.5 seasons, he was the 4th winningest coach amongst coaches that were with the same team. I think that's the thing Clay Travis that's been floating around. Obviously he had the most successful 3 consecutive year run in 40 years. So, okay, we know you want to win a national championship, and you make this drastic kick against a Hall of Fame coach. It just, that's where I understood the cringe from it. So the onus is now on Pat, is like, okay, you need someone that's going to be able to maximize talent better. And let's be honest, James was pretty good at that. Great recruiter, great builder of talent, and successful getting them into the draft. Now it's on him to make that home run hire. So if you were to ask me, Joe, to grade Pat Kraft on it, I'd give him a solid B. I was pretty pumped about it, but there's that thing out there that I just felt the explanation of the scales. I mean, grant you, he wasn't pressed on it, and he really did answer it. So to me, that's why I give it a B.
Yeah, and it really makes you wonder about, kind of the differences of opinion that James Franklin and Pat Kraft might have had regarding modern college football, right? We heard James Franklin talk about how much pride he took in being, to use his words after the playoff win against SMU, one of the last real college football programs out there. That doesn't sound like a guy who embraced the transfer portal. He said it a lot throughout last season. We're not a big portal team. And, part of that is just, him saying the facts. But I think he took pride in pointing out how SMU had 40, 50 transfers, whatever, and Penn State didn't have nearly that many. Whereas, Pat Kraft, I think Franklin prided himself on building a program in the more traditional way. And when I say traditional, like 2019 is traditional compared to what we have in college football now, right? But getting to know a kid when he's 14 years old, getting to know their family, bringing them to Penn State, and then watching his college football career go and helping him get to the NFL. That's the type of program I think James Franklin took pride in having and what Penn State was able to have. And not that Pat Kraft wouldn't appreciate that, but it seems, and a lot of this, and I want to give a shout out to Nate Bauer at On Free Sports reporting this out on the BWI podcast. You look past football, right, with Pat Kraft. You look at getting a guy like Gavin McKenna. You're paying to get Gavin McKenna, right? You're embracing modern college athletics to get Gavin McKenna. In basketball, you have Caden Mingo, borderline 5-star guy. That's not a player Penn State basketball is supposed to get, and that's not a player I don't think Penn State would get if they don't embrace modern college athletics. So, yeah, Pat stressed the point of embracing the modern feel of college football, and it's kind of ironic that a lot of Joe Paterno supporters would dog Franklin, compare him to Joe, but when it comes down to it, Franklin is more like Joe in his philosophy in building a program than most coaches are, and that may have been part of his undoing.
Well, here's where I'm going to counter that a little bit, Joe. Penn State, James wasn't like Dabo Sweeney, number one. To me, I think
He
James,
wasn't all that far from it, though, was he?
well, let's counter this here. So, number one, okay, I still feel your foundation has to be built through traditional recruiting. You can't have, not every team's going to be successful with the high transfer model. I mean, you look at why Florida State is failing under Norvell. When it was
True.
successful, it was getting the right transfers in. So James has that right. And let's be honest here. In his time at Penn State, since the portals come open, think of all the players he has supplemented to this roster that have been a success. Chop Robinson, Arnold, it starts with an E.
Ebiketie.
That's it. Okay. All the guys this year, the wide receivers, TJ Shanahan, Amari Campbell, AJ Harris was a transfer in. So I think James had the right idea with it. So my question to Press and Kraft was if it would be, from my perspective, James's philosophy is I want my team. And again, this is kind of what I'm in, how I'm reading it, where I could be wrong, but I want to have the foundation built from traditional recruiting, and the players that aren't exactly living up to how they could be, I want to be able to supplement with the portal, and he's done that.
But here's like obviously Penn State made it to the semifinal of the college football playoff last year, largely because of the class of 2022, right? Abdul Carter, Drew Howard, Nick Singleton, Katron Allen. The first, however many handful of names would be either from that 2022 class or predating the 2022 class. With Tyler Warren was the class of 2020, I think.
Mhm.
So 2021, but my point here is that 2022 recruiting class in college football, that was really the last pre-NIL class, right? NIL came into legislation summer of 2021, and by that point, a lot of people in that class were either committed to Penn State or close to committing to Penn State or had been recruited by Penn State. So, is it possible for Penn State to get another difference making class like that without embracing name, image, and likeness a little more? I'm not saying it isn't possible, but you look at their classes 2023, 24, 25, they haven't come close to matching what they did in 2022 yet. And I'm not sure that's a coincidence.
You're not going to hit on every class. So, so let me counter. I'm going to counter again here. There's a lot of foundational pieces that you find and that you hope evolve. Quentin Martin hasn't been able to take that next step.
With that said, though, and I'm sorry to cut you off. Quentin Martin's the type of guy. It's a little different because he's from the Pittsburgh area, right? So you have to get lucky with guys from PA being really good. Nick Singleton.
I'm thinking of that, Joe. Martin was rated between 4 and 5 stars, depending on your service. Typically when programs like Alabama and Georgia were winning national championships, they were literally 3 and 4 elite backs deep. Penn State has been 2, and trust me, I got nothing wrong with Singleton or Catron. Even though Singleton's struggling this year, the overall body of work, it's hard to argue with it. But Penn State hasn't had that reload. So you could potentially say that there's a potential miss there. They've done really well with tight ends, getting that room together. Defensive end has been really well. They kind of dry it up a little bit. So maybe what the difference is, and where I will agree with you on, is maybe Pat wanted James to be a little bit more decisive on the evaluation of talent, instead of maybe, okay, let's wait and allow them to evolve, maybe be a little bit more impatient, we'll say, and embrace the portal and find someone that could be an upgrade there to be a championship contender. I will concede that to you.
Hey, let's talk about Terry Smith. You gave Pat a B plus. I don't see how Terry Smith gets anything less than an A plus for his press conference. Do you?
I'm going to give it a B, and here's why I'm going to give it a B. I think just people are grading him an A on a curve. I don't do curves. I look at exactly what's being said, all of the above. You could, in my experience, he was deer in the headlights still dealing with the emotional impact. I'll give him that. I think he did extremely well, considering that, like, some people look at, oh, you gave him a B, that's bad. No, not that. I think for someone that has been thrusted into the situation that he was in, to be able to get out there, kind of articulate it, he was very blunt. He mentioned, I believe, AJ Harris was benched. He also discussed, like, he wants to get alignment back, make sure the whole team. And I think the analogy he uses is everyone pulling the rope the same direction. Again, I think that was the analogy, right, Joe? Or something to that nature. So I give him a B. I mean, he did, like, an A to me, Joe, would have been if Terry had that kind of, like, gave me the confidence that he's going to turn this around. I'm still not confident, and it's no indictment on Terry. I mean, this team has been on a huge roller coaster. These players, who knows where they're at emotionally at this point. But
And plus, I don't know if any coach can win now with Drew Allen.
Well, it's not just Drew Aller. I look into the trenches. If you're telling me you had to bench AJ Harris, who was by all accounts one of the top cornerbacks coming into this season, that was going to be one of the top ones drafted into the 2026 NFL draft if he declared early. There's stuff there. I think Terry gave me the confidence, like, he's not going to bend to anyone. Like, everyone's going to toe the line, or he's just going to go next man up. I think he's going to embrace trying to keep whatever commitments Penn State has. But like I said, some things about where the state of the team is, I wish he would have been more like descriptive and was willing to talk more about it. I felt at times some of the answers were a little short. So that's he gets a B for me. But it's still I still think impressive considering. I mean,
Yeah,
Joe, if we did a game together on a Saturday and I came in on Sunday and the powers that be at Nittany Sports Now came and told me you're no longer here and you need to be the lead, I would be as shaken as Terry. So I mean, I'll give him I give him thumbs up, but I'm not going to give him like the A mark everyone else is.
you will agree, though, that Terry confirmed basically what we all had been saying, probably even before this three game losing streak happened, which was Penn State just doesn't seem to be having fun playing football, right? He pretty much confirmed that, saying, like, if we lose a game, it's going to be because the other guys were better. It's not going to be because of lack of effort or anything else. So I think that right there kind of gave away a lot of the issues that were apparent to us in that last three game stretch,
Why
and
do
even
you
before
think they're
that
not
stretch.
having fun?
What?
Why do you think they're not having fun?
Well, it's obvious now, but the first three games, I can't pinpoint one exact. Maybe it was the pressure.
And that's where I think I'm going with it. I think it goes even beyond the first three games. You know, I think there's a lot of money in the room. It's the first time they're dealing with money. They're dealing with really high pressure. You know, everyone seemed tight. So I think that's where it is, Joe, on it. But again, it's unfortunate. I mean, football at the end of the day should be fun, and it's going to be something that I think every program at some point is going to have to contend with. Whenever the expectations are so great, and money is so great, and there's all the microscope is so great, how's your team going to do it? Because remember, at the end of the day, these are still young men that have to process all this.
Yeah. Uh, so would you agree that when Penn State plays Iowa Saturday, that it's the first time that moral victories will be accepted at Penn State in a while?
No, not at all. I mean, here's the thing. I think everyone's this season is lost. If I think the moral victory for the season, if they somehow can get bowl eligible, I think Iowa's one of the games that they might be able to clip and get there. I mean, Michigan State and Rutgers are the other ones. I really don't see Penn State beating Ohio State, Indiana, or Nebraska at this point. So I think what's big with this game, Joe, can they get one? Can they show a rebound? Because I think one of the things this team hasn't had this year is that rebound. I mean, I something felt like watching the first three games, it felt like going through the motions to them, and then they had the gut punch against Oregon, and then it was just that carryover. This team hasn't rebounded, so I think if they rebound and win, everyone's going to be there. I think for the most part, the fans might be a little bit more accepting if they see the team play with a little bit more spirit and more to the potential of what we've seen the last 3 years. But it's Penn State, Joe. There's no such thing as moral victories here.
So, Ethan Grunkemeyer, right? We talked about him a little bit. We can talk about him a little more because he's trusted. Him and Terry Smith were both put in pretty crazy situations, right? With no one expected Grunkemeyer to be the quarterback. When the Northwestern game started, and nobody expected Terry Smith to be the head coach against Iowa. What are you expecting to see from number 17?
Air it out. Just at this point, they can't live. I, in my opinion, Joe, you're putting a kid out there. He's seen some meaningful snaps over the last two seasons. It's you got to let it rip and build his confidence. You can't just hand him like 4 or 5 plays. you got to get him to a point of he can go in there. And I mean, the coach that worked with Drew, Brad, I can never say his last name right, Joe.
Mandler.
Yeah, Coach Mandler always said he is just as a fine product as Drew. So let's put him into situations, simplify, get the offense where you're pressuring downfield, get the offense to the point where Drew and Nick, not Drew and Katron and Nick, I should say, are dominating the line of scrimmage. Get more people involved. There's so much talent on this team. You know, while I don't think that they're going to be bowl bound this year, it's just I think there's issues there. They have the talent to believe it or not, Joe, to you know run it out and win out. They really do. It's just can they execute when it matters most? Will Knowles try to simplify the approach and allow his defenders to be fast? Will Hodel instead of going sideways, go vertical? It's a wait to be seen. But with Grunk, he has to be able to pressure downfield, because if he can, it's going to open up the box. It's going to let Katron and Nick do things. And look, if they can do things, they can get that big win, and maybe there's something that they can start working with for Ohio State, because essentially, Joe, if they can get some bread and butter developed against Iowa and then work the bye week as they should, they can be going into Columbus with a plan to do it. They have the talent. They always play Ohio State tough. Let's see them do it in Iowa City here on Saturday.
Yeah, so let's talk about the coaching search now. We're not going to get too extensive. We don't have to. This is going to go on for at least about a month and a half, maybe 2 months. Nittany Sports Now has two coaching search hot boards up. I'm going to read from the second one, which we published Wednesday morning. And I'm just gonna, there's 14 names on it. I think there's 14. And this is from a combination of what's being tweeted out there and what we have heard about, who might be interested in Penn State, who's realistic, etc. I'm going to go down these lists in order, Fat Man, and I'm going to give a name, and you're going to tell me if it's a realistic thought in your mind. First one, kind of a courtesy. Pat Kraft did say he's a candidate, but unless something crazy happens the rest of the year, nobody, I don't think, sees this happening. Terry Smith.
I'll just be happy if he's still on the staff next year.
Right. So we're writing this because On Free reported it. Another long shot for different reasons, but Marcus Freeman.
No.
All right, Kalen DeBoer.
Yeah, are people just making things up at this point?
Right. Shane Beamer, that's an interesting one.
No, because he loves South Carolina. I mean, Virginia Tech's going to try to pursue him. He wants no part of that, and I think he's real comfortable with where he's at. So, no.
All right. The name we talked about Sunday as a potential option. He's a guy you like a lot. Will Stein.
Yes, I think he's a realistic option. I think I would give him, and I know it doesn't sound great, but when you really start to think about it, we're so in infancy to put someone so high, it doesn't make sense. I put him about 30%.
But would he be a good Would he be a good choice, do you think?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think a lot of it is because of, and I wrote this, is what he's done with the quarterbacks, right? 2023, Bo Nix was a Heisman finalist. Last year, Dylan Gabriel was a Heisman finalist. And you could say, okay, well, those guys were established starters before, but A, neither one of them were Heisman finalists before coming to Oregon, and B, look at Dante Moore this year. Dante Moore played at UCLA. He wasn't great. He wasn't really proven coming into this season, but he's been working with Will Stein for 2 years, and up until laying an egg against Indiana, he was right there in the Heisman mix, and he could play himself in there again in the second week of the season. So I think Will Stein is a name to watch. Whether he'd leave Oregon, who knows, but. I think that's worth looking into. And the next name is kind of a similar guy, no head coaching experience, but a well respected assistant in his 30s, Brian Hartline.
Very realistic shot. I'd give it a 20%. I don't know if he wants to be going up against Ohio State every year, so I'll give it 20%.
And I think too, there's a lot to like about Hurtline, right? Obviously he has a national championship ring. He's the best. I'd say pound for pound, he's the best position coach in the country. I don't know if there's any doubt about that. But do you want to hire a guy who's best known as a position coach, even though he is an offensive coordinator? Is that a red flag to you?
Well, here's the red flag. Another red flag is how much coordination is he really doing in Ryan Day's
That is
offense?
true. Yeah.
The only
Yeah.
reason I like him, the only reason I'm a little bullish on him is everyone is starting to circle the wagons with him, so there might be something there. But in a position like this, you would have to hear the right things, and I think he could. So that's the only reason I give it about 20%. I like him, but we'll see.
Yeah, and it's not like another thing too is that Brian Hartline was the offensive coordinator in 2023, and then he was demoted in favor of Bill O'Brien and then Chip Kelly. So what do you think that says?
Mm, I mean, it's Chip Kelly though.
Yeah, and it's Bill O'Brien, so that's probably more of Ryan Day getting guys who are available. But all right, we're getting back into fantasy land. Although I think this guy has a better chance of coming than DeBoer or Freeman Woods. Still not great. Lane Kiffin.
Ooh, I think he's the master leverage person. I don't see him
Yeah.
leaving the SIP. I think he's going to kind of get a glance of what it is and go back to Ole Miss and to the Grove and say, "Hey, I need all this stuff." So I'm gonna put it at 10%. Um, it's on the precipice of Fantasyland, but Lane has been known to flirt with everything.
All right. Now we're getting to the favorites. Matt Rule.
Yeah, you might be surprised, and I'm going to stick with what I put in my column. I'm going to put it about 10%, Joe. I don't think it's as slam dunk and as viable as you think. A lot of people like to think with Rule, it's, oh, he's an alum, this is his dream job, la di da di da di da. But I think it was either Brennan or Tyler Donahue that talked to him at Big Ten Media Days in 2023, and he was like, "Yeah, I still get up to State College from time to time. Doesn't have as much family up there. He went because he was honored, and that was about it." So I don't think that State College pull is as strong as people think. And his answer the other day seemed very sincere. I firmly believe he wants to resurrect Nebraska, and I think he feels he's on that path. I also think he wants to break that transient stigma because he's never been at a place longer than 4 years in his career. So I say no.
Right. What would you like Matt Rule as a head coach though? Because I don't. Rule would not be my first choice, but I think going his record against top 10 teams and ranked teams is a little unfair because James Franklin was losing these games at Penn State. Matt Rule was losing them at Baylor and Temple, and even post Tom Osborne, Nebraska isn't a great comparison to Penn State. So I think Ben Jones put it really well. Former Penn State beat writer, StateCollege.com. He said you wouldn't get on Penn State basketball for losing to Duke, and I think that's a pretty good analogy. So I don't think Rule's the best option, but I think judging him by losing to ranked teams is pretty unfair considering where he's been.
Considering what Franklin's accomplished in his time here, Matt Rule's a downgrade.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I just think what the thing people are throwing out is a little misguided, is what I'm trying to say.
To an extent, yes, I agree with you, but it's like the meme that you see on social media with the guy wearing the same shirt that he just got another one as a gift. You essentially replace James Franklin with a variant of James Franklin and Matt Rule. So
Yeah.
it's not like Penn State's in the gutter or anything. So you got to find someone that can propel you, not kind of keep you flat, because that's the whole everything why Kraft fired Franklin in the first place.
All right. Another big name people are talking about, Kirk Signetti.
Zero. Zero. There's so much made up stuff with Signetti. It's so funny. It's comical at this point, listening to people try to create a narrative. I think a lot of people miss their calling, that they should have been like children's books writers, Joe, and because the fiction is so poor. Here's the thing: the calendars don't align, and Signetti has a history of literally saying, I don't welcome the distraction. He has something special brewing this year in Indiana. He's not leaving. The timing isn't right for him. He's also going to be 65 next year. So, what's your long term plan with Signetti, right?
Mhm.
Like in 5 years, he's probably going to be done. They're back to square one. It makes no sense. Zero.
All right. Matt Campbell.
This is a good 30% or 35%. I think he's a great attraction. He's married to Iowa State, fierce. Like, he's turned down USC. I don't think he wants to leave Ames. I think he would be a great candidate. I think he'd be a great coach here, especially what he's done the last several seasons at Iowa State. I mean, I know they've had some down years, but what he did with was it Brock Purdy and Brees Hall in the early 2020s there, Joe?
It was, yeah.
So fantastic there. And then last season's program record with 11 wins, and they made the Pop Tarts Bowl against Miami. I think he'd be fantastic. I just don't think you got to get him to want to get out of Ames. So it's 30% great candidate. That's the only thing you're working against.
All right. Here's a big one, Manny Diaz.
That would be a bad pick. I'm going to go
Why do you
15.
think that?
I think he's a great. I think he was a great coordinator. Duke isn't Penn State, guys. I'm sorry, and he was at Miami. So let's paint this picture for you. You're in Miami. He takes over from Mark Richt, who is basically James Franklin, and you have the resources Miami has. You have the fertile recruiting territory and all that. That didn't end well. This highlight there was Mac Brown choking him after a game. So no, this is a bad one. I don't care if he was a great coordinator for us. Oh, enjoy Durham. No.
Yeah, but I think Penn State just needs to hire an offensive coach. I don't know if you agree with that, but it feels like they're going to be able to always attract good defensive coordinators, and they've had a hard time getting consistent offensive coordinators since Joe Moorhead. So I don't know if you agree with that or not.
I agree with that notion too. You know, um, I would love LSU's defensive coordinator to come up here, but again, who's going to be the offensive mind? That's where we're at with everything.
Right. Here's a name that hasn't really been floated around anywhere, but I threw it in there because I think it would make sense because of what he's done at Vanderbilt, and because, as Penn State showed, if you win at Vanderbilt, that's an impressive thing that could get you a bigger job. Clark Lee, who currently has 4 more games against ranked opponents, I probably agree with that too. But I just wanted to throw it out there because, if he does end up winning, double-digit games at Vanderbilt.
So I was talking to my guy from Vanderbilt that he also does stuff for Wisconsin, but he he does a lot of stuff on weekends because he lives in Nashville. He does stuff for Vanderbilt. There's a 0%. Lee's a Vandy alum. He's in love with where he's at. He thinks he can take him to the next level, especially with NIL and the resources he's given. I don't, what, what does Penn State offer Lee that he doesn't already have down there, especially in this era where the playing field has been flattened? He's at where he wants to be. So it's 0.
Right. The betting favorite, well, he was as of last night. I haven't had the chance to check the update yet. The betting favorite for the Penn State coaching job is a guy that briefly worked at Penn State, and now is the offensive coordinator of the Buffalo Bills. He's a Broyles Award winner for what he did with the 2019 LSU Tigers. Never been a head coach, but everybody's got to start somewhere, and this guy is elite offensive mind, Joe Brady.
He's my leader in the house as well. And it's not because of the betting favorite. I was listening to Chris the Bear Felicia. I think it's how you say his last name. And Tim Brando even retweeted this as well. When you look at Joe Brady's resume and you look at the endorsements that he has from where he's been, Sean Payton thinks he's an absolute genius. He's an NFL head coach waiting to happen. And to me, that's the barrier right now of Penn State getting that guy is, what does he want to do as a head coach? Does he want to be in the NFL or college? He would be a home run hire, in my opinion, because the resume is there and it's impressive. I put it at 40% right now. The only thing that I feel with Brady is, with his NFL head coaching stock there, is that where he wants to be versus having to deal with the rigor of being a college head coach?
Here's a name that Nittany Sports Now confirmed in a story we wrote to start Tuesday morning. Confirmed is a candidate through sources. Missouri coach Eli Drinkwitz.
I'm at about 25% with him. I think he's going to entertain it more than most people think. He went against a lot of the SEC coaches and the SEC on his playoff stance. It's a very unforgiving league. Knowing that he can be able to come up here, fresh start, have all the resources there, I think he's viable. But the thing you have to realize with him is, does he have the ability to execute the Kraft manifesto, and that is winning a national championship?
All right. Here's a name that I would not. I don't think he would do very well in the post NIL, in the not the post NIL era, in the NIL era. But he doesn't coach anywhere. He's always going to be talked about with these jobs, especially with his history at Penn State regarding the 2011 vacancy. Urban Meyer.
Am I allowed to quote David Jones right now?
Sure.
Joking aside, 0, and this is why. He's 61, 62 years old. Again, you're getting in that Kirk Cignetti range there. I think he's at peace of where his coaching career is. I don't think he has the energy or desire to go up against the monster he created. I think he's content of where he's at. He's one of the winningest coaches ever. I think he just got into the Hall of Fame. what does he have to prove at this point? He had an undefeated season at Utah, won double-digit games at Bowling Green in the season, 2 national championships at Florida, won a natty at Ohio State. He owns, I believe, the series head-to-head with Nick Saban. What more does he need? I mean, and then his impeccable record against Michigan. So, yeah, 0.
All right, that does it for our hot board. And that's gonna do it for Joe and the Fat Man. Kyle, do you have anything else to say?
All I got to tell our loyal audience is there's going to be a lot of fiction out there on it. You're going to hear some crazy things, So one of the things we may try to do, Joe, I don't know how successful we'll be at it, since we're living in the thick of it, is we should have a segment when this is all said and done and talk about the craziest things that we heard during this, because again, it's tough. Everyone's trying to make money. They hear one thing, they have someone that says, I'm willing to vouch for this, they run with it. So if you think it's too good to be true, it might not be. And again, I know college football's crazy, especially with Lincoln Riley leaving in the middle of the night and Brian Kelly wanting to find his inner Southern draw that took him to the Bayou. But those are so rare examples.
All right, well, that is going to do it for Joe and the Fat Man, Joe Smeltzer, Kyle Fatman Golik. When we're back, we'll be talking about whatever happened Saturday night in Iowa City. Take care, everybody.
Good night, Canada.